Hi, sixth graders. So in our last lesson, we were looking at fractions and percentages, and we were able to see that you can turn fractions into percentages just by creating a fraction out of 100. Today we're going to be looking at changing between decimals and percents. So being able to look at a percentage and create a decimal from that percentage. But before we get started, we need to think about what is a decimal. What is a decimal? So a decimal is a part of a number. So it's like a fraction that's like part of a whole, and it uses a dot, like a little dot, and it also uses the place value of tens, and this is going to be really important. Place value is going to be extremely important in the work that we do when we're working between decimals and percentages. So, decimals are parts of numbers. They use a dot. Sorry, my dog is wanting to be a part of the video right now. They use a dot and the place value of Stop. Of tens. Okay, I'm going to hit pause on this real quick and get the dog out. I will be right back. So, decimals are parts of numbers. They use a dot and tens. So, like fractions, but instead they use a dot. So, let's give you an example. All right, so for example, we have 0.2. This is not read as 0.2. This is actually said as 2 tenths because the 2 is in the tenths column. You can also read this as 20 hundredths. So when you say these numbers, you're saying it based on where the last number is in the decimal. So 0.20 is like 20 hundredths. You could also have one that's like 0.22, and that would be 22 hundredths. Okay, so it's really important that we use place value when we are talking about decimals. All right, so we can change a decimal, a fraction, into a decimal. So when we're looking at percentages, and we're looking at what to convert, it really just depends on what do they give you first. So let's say that they give you a decimal first. Okay, so we have a decimal, and we can use this decimal to make a percentage. So 36 hundredths. This is like saying 36 hundredths as a fraction. This is 36 hundredths of a whole number. This is 36 hundredths of a whole number. They're both fractions. So because they're both a type of fraction or a part of a number, we can take this 0.36 or this 36 hundredths, turn it into a fraction over 100, and bam, you get 36%. because it was in the hundredths place. Hundredths place, and percentages are always out of 100. So decimal, if we take a decimal and turn it into a fraction, we are able to then get a percentage. So if I have a decimal that looks like this, 0.07, this is the same as saying 7 hundredths. So this is equal to 7 hundredths, which is the same as saying 7%, because I can take this top number and turn it into a percentage because it's out of 100. Let's do another one. Let's say that I have a decimal that looks like this. I have a decimal that is 9/10. So I have 9/10. How can I turn this one into a fraction? I can turn this into a fraction by just using my place value words. 9/10. Well, as a fraction, this is 9/10. However, it's not 9% because our fractions have to be out of 100. So I'm going to multiply this until I get to a denominator of 100. Well, I know if I multiply by 10/10, I can get out of 100, 90. So this is 90%. Again, it has to be out of 100. Okay, it is your turn to do a try it. So let's do some try its. Try it number 1 says change this decimal into a percent. Change this decimal into a percent. Change this one into a percent. And change this into a percent. All right, when you are done, hit play so that you can hear me. Otherwise, hit pause so that I can solve these for you. All right, so 26.26 is the same as 26 hundredths because it's in the hundredths place. So tenths, hundredths, so 26%. 0.03 is the same as 3 hundredths or 3%. And 0.4 is 4/10. That's how you read that one, 4/10, because it's in the tenths column, one place after the decimal. 10, one place after the decimal. 4/10, and 10 times 10 gets me to a denominator of 100. 4 times 10 equals 40, or 40%. All right, 6th graders, how did you do on changing? We're going to just stop and do a real quick check-in right now. How are you at decimals to percents? Decimals to percents, do a quick check-in. And then when you are ready, go ahead and turn the page, or I'm going to turn the page. So hit pause if you need to keep copying this down. All right. So now let's say that they give you a percent first, and they want you to make the decimal. So it says something like, change this decimal into a percent. So I'm going to change this percent into a decimal. So I have something like this. 15%. Okay, so 15%. I know that 15% is out of 100, right? So 15 out of 100, because when I learned about fractions and percentages, I knew that whatever I put over 100 gave me my percentage. So 15% is the same as 15 over 100, or 15 hundredths. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 15 and put a decimal point here, because this is the tenths, this is the hundredths place after the decimal, right? So if we were looking at place value, we have 15% is equal to 15 hundredths, or 0.15. You can also think of this as I have the whole number of 15, and I am going to take and make a decimal point. 2 jumps, because 100 has 2 zeros in it. So I can take my whole number and move the decimal point, tenths, hundredths, and I have a decimal of 0.15. Okay, let's do another example. Let's say that I have 5%. Well, 5% is the same as saying 5 out of 100, because a percentage is always out of 100. Well, this is the same as saying 5 hundredths. So 5 hundredths would look like 0.5. 5 hundredths, because it's in the hundredths spot. That's my hundredths spot. It is not like this. It is not this. It doesn't. This actually equals 0.50. 5 tenths is like 50 hundredths. So these two things are not the same. This is the tenths place. So this is not the same as this. These two are not the same. So let's just write not the same. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say that I have example C. Let's say that I have 112%. 112%. Okay, well, I know, like before, percents are just out of 100. So this is really saying 112 out of 100, or 112 hundredths. It's like saying I have 112 pennies, right? Because we know that percent is the same as pennies. Hundreds, it takes 100 pennies to make $1. So when I look at this one, I can move my decimal point over 2 places here, or I can read this as 112 1/12 hundredths, because it's an improper fraction. So I could even simplify this to be 1 whole with 12 hundredths left over. So that's where the decimal comes in, and where that conversion process of reducing your fraction, simplifying it from a mixed number or into a mixed number. So you can also look at this as I have 112 as my whole number, and I need tenths, hundredths, so I'm going to put my decimal point right there. 2 places over. So I have tenths, hundredths. All right, let's go ahead and do the last of our try-its for today. Try-its. All right, I would like for you to do, this one says 73%. Turn that into a decimal. And number 2, Let's go with 2%. Turn that into a decimal. Go ahead and hit pause right now so you don't hear me solving. And then come back when you are ready. All right, so 73% is the same as saying 73 hundredths, or 73 out of 100. And 73 hundredths is written as 0.73. 73 hundredths. All right, this one, I have 2%. 2% is like saying I have 2 out of 100, because that percent sign means out of 100. So 2 out of 100 is the same as saying 0.02 tenths hundredths. So I have 2 hundredths. That means I needed 2 numbers over 100. All right, 6th graders, go ahead right now and answer your essential question for me. How do you convert, or how do you change between decimals and percents? How do we change between decimals and percents? What's important? And how rate your understanding? How are you feeling right now about decimals and percentages? 1, I don't know what to do. I don't know place value, and that's really scary. But I'm going to practice and do some more work with maybe playing the video again. 2, I can kind of see how it works. I just need to remember to read a decimal using place value, or remember to do the step of converting between a fraction in between, or a 3. I totally understand this. I understand that I just always need to have a fraction out of 100 between going decimals and percents. All right, 6th graders, you can now go ahead and go to your practice work on big ideas, or you can ask me for help if you needed some extra help. As always, I appreciate all of your hard work, and make it a great day the Cougar way.